Today we're making these super quick and easy to sew reversible fabric baskets. You can make these from any material you have, and they are perfect to use up scrap fabric. These two are made using curtain fabric that I actually got from a sample book, using little sheets of fabric like these. This is also the perfect project to use up all those fat quarter fabrics you've got lying around your house. And because they're reversible, you can use a variety of fabrics and give yourself 2 new decoration objects for 1. Or fill them with goodies for the perfect gift hamper. So let me show you how to make one of these super simple baskets. I'm going to start with this piece of fat quarter fabric in this bright and colourful flower pattern, but you can use whatever fabric you like. So this is my fabric. It is just a fat quarter size piece of fabric, and I'm actually going to make 2 baskets out of this fabric. So first I'm going to fold it in half and cut out here, so I've got 2 pieces of fabric. But you could make a basket this big if you wanted, you could make it extra small, whatever size you like. But I'm just going to cut this out so I've got 1 piece of fabric, and then we'll start from there. Now I need to choose a second piece of fabric to go on the inside of my basket. This of course could be any fabric, so I could go another pattern, something completely different, but I think for today I'm going to choose this nice deep maroon colour. So I'm going to cut out the same size in this fabric. Throughout the rest of the video, I'm going to call this my main fabric and this my lining fabric, even though technically you can reverse the baskets, so either side could be your main outside fabric. But to make things easier while I explain, I'm just going to have one side as the main fabric, which is going to be this one. The next step depends on which sort of fabric you use. I'm using cotton and a poly cotton here, so I'm going to need to interface my fabrics to make them a little thicker so that the basket can stand up on its own. If you're using material like this, which is actually a sample of curtain fabric, this fabric is a bit thicker and can hold its shape better. So for this one, I didn't interface the main fabric, but because I used polycotton for the lining, I did interface the lining. So for any piece of fabric that is cotton or a thinner material, cut out a piece of interfacing that is the same size. The interfacing I'm going to use is this medium weight iron-on interfacing. I'm now going to give everything a nice iron to make sure there's no creases, and then I'm going to iron on my interfaces to the back sides of the fabric. So now both pieces of fabric have their interfacing. It's time to head to the sewing machine. I've threaded up my machine with this nice cream coloured cotton. You can use any colour cotton for now, but we will be top stitching later, so I just use the same thread that I'm going to use throughout. The first thing to do is fold your fabric in half. This is roughly the size your basket's going to be, so this one is fairly big. And add pins or clips along both sides. I'm going to add one extra thing, which is my little logo, because I'm making these to sell at a craft fair. So if you want to add a label too, I fold mine into half and then tuck it in between the fabric. With it sandwiched in between, clip to hold it into place. I'm also just going to add a couple of clips up at the top so that the fabric doesn't slip around while I'm sewing it. So now you should have something that looks like this. Using a straight stitch, sew along both sides of the fabric. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to do a back stitch at the top and at the bottom. Do the same for the other side. So now you should have a little pocket with an opening up here and the 2 sides sewn together. Do exactly the same thing for your lining fabric. Fold it in half and sew down both sides. Now we're going to clip the corners. For this, I'm going to take an erasable pen and a ruler, and I'm going to measure a square from the bottom of the fabric and from the thread of the line you just sewn. don't go from the edge of this fabric, make sure you're going from the thread. Depending how big your basket is will depend how big your corners want to be. Because this is quite a big basket, I'm going to do 2 inches. So I'm going to measure 2 inches along my sew line, mark it there, and 2 inches along the bottom, and then draw your square. Do this on the other side and for both sides of your lining fabric. So now you've got 4 squares, it's time to cut them out. So make sure you've measured correctly and they're in the right place on the fold of the fabric at the bottom. Using some sharp scissors, cut these out. This next step I like to do to make your life easier when sewing it all together, and that is to press down these seams. It's time to make the squared bottom of the basket. So take each corner that you just cut and open it up so that these 2 sides now meet. Get them nice and straight and then pin or clip them together. Do that for all 4 corners. You now want to sew along each of these new 4 corners. Again, backstitch at the top and at the bottom, and I used a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now you have 2 little pockets. To attach them together, flip your lining so it's the right way round. Make sure your corners are nice and sharp, pressing them out with your fingers. Now place your lining inside your main fabric. Line up the 2 side seams and clip or pin into place. And then line up the 2 edges of the lining and the main fabric and pin or clip all the way around. You're now going to sew all the way around the top, but make sure you leave a gap about that big so we can flip the bags out later. If you need to remind yourself where you need to start and end, I like to add a second clip that will remind me to stop here. I'm also going to use a slightly bigger seam allowance, maybe about 1/2 inch, so it makes it easier to close the edge once we're finished. I'm coming up to my 2 clips, which is where I need to stop, so I'm going to backstitch and then cut off my thread. It's now time to flip the basket the right way round. So this opening that you left, and then push through the right side of the fabric through this hole. If you've got thicker material, this might be tricky, so make sure you leave yourself a big enough gap. But with enough wriggling around, you should be able to pull your basket all the way through. So you'll end up with something like this. You then need to push your lining inside the basket, make sure everything's nice and straight, and the corners match up inside. I then go around with my fingers and make sure the seam is right at the top. Where you've got your opening, fold in both sides of the fabric so it matches the rest of the top. At this point, I'll give the top a nice press before we add the final top stitch. The final step is to close off this opening by adding a top stitch all the way around your fabric. Where your opening is, you can add a clip or a pin to just make sure it stays exactly in the right place. And there you have it. That is your basket finished. I like to fold down just a little bit of the top edge to give it that contrasting colour. And of course these are reversible. I could have the pattern on the inside. And there you go, that is the basket complete. Like I said, these are just the perfect little baskets that you could make with any fabric you want to match any room, to match any vibe, any colour scheme. You could supersize it and make a kid's toy box, or you could scale it down to use in a bedroom to keep hair accessories in. Whatever you want, there is a basket you could make for it. Like I said, I make these to sell at craft fairs, so I love to make lots of different baskets. Some colourful like this, some slightly more minimal. For this one, I used a patchwork of 2 different coloured fabrics. This is a nautical themed one that I made, and this one I used 2 pattern fabrics, so you can reverse it to give you a different colour. But a quick tip for this one I did have to do is because the anchor fabric has the pattern going in one direction, if I just folded it in half, the anchors on one side would be upside down. So instead I cut the fabric in 2 and sandwiched them together so that when I made the basket, the anchors were upright the entire way around the basket. But that's just a little extra step that I did. And that's it. That's how easy it is to make these baskets. Make them for yourself or for a friend. If you like this little tutorial and you want to see some more easy home crafts like this, then drop a like and let me know in the comments, and hopefully I can make some more videos like this in the future.